Hello Warhammer fans, welcome back to the channel. I've just returned from Warhammer Fest and let me tell you, it was a blast. The event was packed with tons of amazing reveals for Warhammer the Old World and I couldn't wait to share them all with you. What really stole the show were the first ever miniatures, brand new miniatures for the game that were revealed at Warhammer Fest. The level of detail on these models was truly impressive and they've got me even more hyped for the game's release now. Plus we got some exclusive information and insights from the Q&A sessions, which were only available to those who attended in person. So in this video I'm going to give you a rundown of all the exciting reveals from Warhammer Fest and share my personal thoughts on what we can expect from Warhammer the Old World. Let's dive in. Let's kick off with these models. The first two new models from Warhammer the Old World are a Tomb King from Nehekara and a Bretonnian Paladin. Both are resin models, and this is Forge World resin. They were very clear. As we get onto the Q&A, you'll see they were really clear that there is going to be absolutely no fine cast. And you haven't heard 800 people cheer quite like that when they heard there was going to be no fine cast involved. So this is Forge World resin, which is what we should expect for the character models. And they also said that any further releases, units and things like that, we'll begin to see them in plastic. Now let's just take a minute to appreciate these models. The Tomb King is really cool. I really like the paint job on this model. I love that although their flesh is decayed and they're bound in these really old rags, the gold and other colours on the model are still really bright. I think that's a really cool juxtaposition and actually is pretty true to life as gold doesn't tarnish. I really like the commanding expression and little details like you can see through the chest cavity, you can see the rib cage coming down. But what's most importantly is that this model really will not look out of place whatsoever in a Tomb King's army. So I feel very safe putting the rest of the models that will come out in Games Workshop's hands. I cannot wait to see what else is coming. Of the two, I have to say for me, the real standout is the Bretonnian Paladin. I think this is a really incredible model for multiple reasons. Firstly, it heralds the first of the new wave of Knights on Foot that we're going to see. Secondly, the sword is taller than he is, and it's through an orc's head. I think that's brilliant, and a real sign of the errantry wars now in full swing. The other little thing that was said at the reveal show was, you know, here we have an orc head, and it would be really strange if that was the only orc that we saw, so hopefully alongside the re-released orc kits, we will get some brand new orcs as well, which would be really cool. But I just love how detailed he is. They did say because he doesn't have a horse with him, he's got to carry a lot of the stuff himself. And that's why you get all these little extra details, the stuff that he's carrying on his back. This model also has a head swap option, but I don't know why you would when you've got this fantastic helmet. The next thing they showed in terms of models was some artwork, and this was really cool artwork. It was black and white artwork, and it was in the style that you would have seen in many of the older battle tomes. And they said it depicted units that we will see in the game. And then the last piece of artwork they revealed was the Necrosphinx, which is a unit that I really love, and I think it's such a shame that that model went out of production. So that it's coming back is just fantastic news. I'll definitely be picking one up, because I am really getting drawn to the Tomb Kings now. And then before the Q&A, we had a couple of slides that just clear some things up and answer a lot of questions that people have been asking. So the first one was called The Time and the Place, and the game is set in the Old World. Yes, thank you, it's called Warhammer the Old World, we know. And it will be set at the time of the Three Emperors, just before the Great War against Chaos, which is hundreds of years before the end times. And this is something that we've suspected because we know about the errantry wars and when they were, and we've been talking for a long time on the channel about everything that's been going on in the Old World during this time. So if you're interested, check out some of the other videos about the specific factions, and you'll get a lot of insights there about what's going on. They said that this setting was really interesting because there was quite a lot going on in the world, and also it was an unexplored time, and things might be familiar but also different, and it gives them that opportunity to do that. And the last thing they said is that the factions that are fighting in the Old World at that time are the ones that they'll be focusing on. So the release of army books and the release of new models and supported factions is going to be quite heavily based on the narrative of who is doing what in the Old World at that time, and they don't have any plans at the moment to expand beyond the Old World. So places like Ind or Nagaroth or Ulthuan, those are quite far away at the moment unless they are specifically fighting in the old world, which I don't think any of those factions are. They did say in the Q&A that once they've done all the army books for the armies fighting in the old world at this time, which will be, you know, things like the Empire, the Bretonnians, the Orcs and Goblins, the Wood Elves perhaps, the Beastmen, they will then reevaluate and decide where they're going to go and what army books they're going to do next. They may keep the same ones and do another edition, or they may expand outwards. But we'll just have to wait and see for that. The next slide confirmed that there will be new models for many factions, both plastic and resin, as well as returning models for many factions. Now these returning models, it was revealed in the Q&A that they will be either plastic or metal. There will be no fine cast. I think this is really cool, especially I'm pleased to hear that some of the metal models are coming back, because Games Workshop has been shying away from metal for quite a while now. It's been a trend that they want to release only plastic kits, but some of the old metal characters and things were really cool, so it's nice to hear that they might be coming back as well. And every 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy army will be playable, with the ongoing focus being on the featured old world army. So what that really means, to clarify that, is when the game drops, all the rules will come out for your 8th edition army, so you'll be able to use them to play Warhammer the Old World. But if you collect and intend on playing an army that isn't involved specifically in the fighting in the Old World in this time period, then it's not going to be supported, at least not in the short or medium term. But I think that this is brilliant, that straight off the bat, every army will be supported. We'll see all kinds of different armies playing. And it's really nice that even though they're only going to focus on a few specific factions to begin with, nobody is actually going to be left behind, and everybody who's got a pre-existing army will be able to play. And that was it for the reveal show, but then after that came the Q&A, and there were some really good questions. I was really impressed with the questions asked, actually, because at previous Warhammer Fests, a lot of the questions have been along the lines of, when are you going to release my faction and stuff like that, and also a lot of people asking questions that they couldn't answer. So fair play to everybody who asked a question. Loads of really relevant, interesting questions, and fair play to Eddie and Adam, because the answers that they gave were really useful and helpful, and they did really seem to try and answer the questions as much as they possibly could. With the only exception being there was a bit of controversy around what actually constitutes a starter set and what doesn't constitute a starter set, but we'll get into that later on. I managed to jot down every question asked and every answer, so I will run through with you now all the questions that were asked and everything that was answered, and a little bit of my take on what they said so that you won't miss anything. So the first thing was, there's no release date yet for the old world being given. They're just not at the stage where they can reveal that to us. That's probably because they haven't set it themselves yet. Otherwise, we might have seen it coming this winter or something like that. The other thing they said was they have no plans to make base adapters for your models. So if you're on 20 mils and you want to rebase to 25 mils, Games Workshop aren't going to provide you with an adapter that increases the size of your base themselves. But they said you can use movement trays or rebase your models. When it comes to base adapters, what I would say is watch this space on the channel, because I have been talking to some manufacturers and I'm hoping to feature something that will be really useful to people trying to update their existing armies and bring them into the old world at some point. The next question was really interesting, and it was about new models. So in a lot of Age of Sigmar armies, we have models that are brand new. They've kind of built upon the factions from the world that was. So an example that was used were the Varangard. Now, these are a brand new cavalry unit for Age of Sigmar that didn't exist in the old world. And the question was around whether or not they would get rules and get built into the old world. And the answer was, no, they won't. The plan isn't to take all of the new things from Warhammer Age of Sigmar and then try and write them into Warhammer the old world somehow, because they're for Age of Sigmar and it has a very different feel to Warhammer the Old World. And personally, I think this is really good news, because these are two different games, these are two different settings. Now, there may be some commonality between the two, but wouldn't it be great if both games were quite special and individual in their own right? You know, we don't want Age of Sigmar on square bases. We want the old world. We want Warhammer Fantasy back. So I think this was a really smart move. And there was another question about whether or not Forge World monsters will be coming back into production. And at the moment, the old Forge World monsters are not being brought back into production. It's just the old Games Workshop kits that will be coming back. Next, we had a question about Mordheim. And it was interesting that we got a question about Mordheim at this point, because In the Warhammer Warcry seminar, there was also a question about Mordheim, whether Warcry would kind of shift into the old world or something like that. And the answer is that Mordheim is not in the works at the moment. It's not something that they've considered making. But if the old world is a really big success and then there is the demand for something like Mordheim, then they will consider working on it and bringing it back. There was then a later question about Mordheim, and I think this was about the 4th or 5th question about Mordheim in Warhammer Fest in the seminars that I went to. At which point they threatened to retcon it so that it didn't exist anymore, which was quite a funny response. And got quite a laugh from the crowd, actually. As for base size clarification, there is going to be a document coming out that will list all of the base sizes. And it said that most, if not all, of the base sizes are going up a little bit, but Eddie couldn't remember the specific sizes at that time, but said just wait for the document, and then that will tell you what your base sizes are. Then we had 3 questions about the rules that were really interesting. So the first question was kind of about the feel of the rules and how will the game play. And they said it's going to be very similar to Warhammer Fantasy Battles. It will have that kind of feel to it. And they've picked and chosen rules that they thought people enjoyed. And then they've added some new stuff. So it will feel familiar, but also feel a bit different and unique. The Horde rule was specifically asked about whether or not that would be coming back. And they didn't know, actually. So they just said, just watch this space. They're not sure if the Horde rule is still in there or not. So we'll have to wait and see the rule pack for ourselves. And then there was a question about army-specific rules, and it was about the Chaos Dwarves, because they had said that all books that were supported in Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition would be coming back. We didn't know if this included Chaos Dwarves, and luckily somebody asked, and they said, yes, Chaos Dwarves will have rules, but they won't be focused on, and they're unlikely to get new miniatures or be a focus of the narrative. But they will have rules for you to be able to play them in the game, which is fantastic news, because the more people who can be included and play the hobby that they love with the models that they love, the better. Then we came on to the question about the starter set. The question was, will the game have a starter set? You know, what will be in it? And they said that it won't have a starter set in the same way as there are starter sets for Horus Heresy. And a lot of people took this as meaning there won't be a launch box as such, but we just need to clarify, and Eddie did clarify, by starter set, they mean a set for someone who has never really played a war game before and will need, to learn the rules, and will need things like measuring aids and stuff like that. And there isn't going to be a box like that has measuring aids and a surface to play on, but there is going to be a box. And they did say that the first 2 factions that they're going to focus on are the 2 factions that we've seen, Bretonia and Chaos. Now, they didn't outright say that this is going to be the launch box, but you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to be. And when that box launches, all of the rules and the resource list and the basing resource will all drop at the same time, so everybody can drop in and start playing. Then we seem to have a wave of questions about models that will come back and what ones we could potentially see. And there isn't a rule for what models will come back and what models won't come back. They're not saying, oh, we're not going to have anything from 5th edition or something like that. They're just going to bring back the things that they think the armies need. So we'll have to wait and see what that is. So they're not confirming everything from 8th edition is back and nothing from 6th edition is back, things like that. It was asked if one of the new models we would see might be Magnus the Pious, and will we see him emerge? And the answer was just, it would be cool, wouldn't it? And that the game is set at the start of the Great War against Chaos, probably a bit before Magnus the Pious has risen to power. So maybe a bit of a don't know. Nobody actually asked if the narrative is going to be driving forward or not. So I don't know if we'll ever actually get to see the Great War against Chaos or not. It was also asked if we will see the Dogs of War return, and the answer was not in the initial pool of things being released. So that tells me probably no plans as yet, but possibly. And then going back and talking about older models that will be included or not included, if you have models that aren't going to be included in the game, but you still have them, they're going to try and write a way for you to continue to use them. One example is Karl Franz. You'll still be able to use your Karl Franz model, but instead of being Karl Franz, he will be a hero on a griffin, just the generic kind. And that was everything, with the exception of what is the best way for me to prepare for the old world? And the answer from Adam was build your models, paint your models, but don't base them just yet unless you're certain. And that's everything from the FAQ. So let me know what you think about it. I really hope that it's been useful to those of you who were unable to attend Warhammer Fest. For me, the clarification about that it's only going to be armies that are actually fighting in the old world to begin with that are going to get the full support was really good to know. The fact that there's no Finecast is really good to know, and the fact that the Necrosphinx is coming back was really exciting for me. But let me know what your highlights were. Hopefully there'll be plenty more to see about Warhammer the Old World around the corner now. Things are really ramping up. We've got loads of information to talk about. We've seen some brand new models, so hopefully we'll have more and more, and hopefully the release date isn't too far away. As ever, this has been 9 Inch Charge. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. A huge thank you to our Patreons, Alith Anar and Sida Kuru Khan. And if you would like to support the channel and go the extra mile, you can become a patron, and there is a link in the description. And I will catch you next time.